Imagine spending your entire life climbing a ladder, only to realize at the top that it was leaning against the wrong wall. In America, ambition is almost a religion. Hustle is a virtue. Productivity is a badge of honor. But what happens when the pursuit of success becomes a pursuit that consumes you from the inside out? This is the part of the story most people never tell, the silent fracture behind the applause. The invisible cost hidden beneath every victory that looks perfect from the outside. And it is here that Ryan Holiday's journey stops being just a personal tale and becomes a mirror for millions who feel the quiet pressure of a world that never lets them rest. According to Seneca, most powerful is he who has himself in his own power. In a culture obsessed with achievement, the idea of stopping even for a moment feels like failure. Yet the more we chase, the more distant we become from ourselves. Ryan Holiday understood this the hard way. His story is not just about success. It is about the confrontation with a deeper question. What if the world celebrates a version of you that slowly destroys the real one? Welcome to the Stoic Lighthouse, where we explore the philosophy that helps you stand firm in a chaotic world. If this message already resonates with you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more clarity to a world flooded with noise. According to Epictetus, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. That idea would become the compass that redirected Ryan's life. But before he discovered the ancient wisdom that rebuilt his inner world, he had to face a truth that many of us eventually confront. Success without peace is simply another form of suffering. And when the noise grows loud enough, even the strongest facade begins to crack. What Ryan found on the other side of that crack was not weakness. It was the beginning of a transformation that would change not only his life, but the lives of millions who learned through him that slowing down is not losing. It is reclaiming your humanity. According to Marcus Aurelius, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That realization would soon become the turning point of everything. Number 1. The prodigy who burned too bright. Ryan Holiday was the kind of talent America loves to celebrate. Young, brilliant, relentlessly driven. Before turning 25, he had already entered circles most people only read about. He learned directly from Robert Greene, one of the most influential strategic thinkers of our time. He became director of marketing at American Apparel during an era when the brand dominated headlines. He shaped campaigns, launched ideas that spread across the country, and sat in rooms where money, influence, and power flowed like electricity. From the outside, it all looked like the dream America promises: velocity, recognition, access. He was the prodigy who seemed unstoppable. But inside, something was beginning to fracture. The constant urgency, the endless expectations. The pressure to produce, to perform, to remain the one who always delivers. The higher he climbed, the more disconnected he felt from his own voice. It is a paradox many Americans live every day. A life full of motion and yet strangely empty. A calendar overflowing, but a soul running on fumes. According to Zeno, well-being is realized by small steps, but is truly no small thing. This was exactly the kind of step Ryan never had time to take. His world moved fast, too fast. Deadlines replaced reflection. Achievements replaced meaning. Productivity replaced presence. And with each new accomplishment, the pressure grew heavier, not lighter. In a culture where being busy is confused with being valuable, Ryan's life was becoming a warning disguised as success. According to William B. Irvine, when we let society set our goals, we may win the race, only to realize we ran in the wrong direction. Ryan was running faster than ever, yet something essential was slipping away. Peace, clarity, control. The applause grew louder, but the noise inside him grew even louder still. He had built a reputation that impressed the world, but he could feel himself drifting from the person he wanted to become. It was the classic American burnout, but behind closed doors, hidden under the armor of achievement. According to Seneca, it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. Nothing felt wasted on the surface, yet the more he achieved, the less grounded he became. That contradiction, that silent internal tension, became the first sign that something had to change, not externally, but at the core of who he was becoming. Ryan Holiday was winning by every external metric, but internally, he was starting to lose himself. Number 2, the high price of an unquiet mind. Success has a way of deceiving us. It shines brightly on the surface, but its shadows often stay hidden until they begin to consume us from within. For Ryan Holiday, the turning point was not a dramatic collapse or a public failure. It was the quiet realization that the life he had built demanded everything from him, except the one thing he needed most: inner stillness. The more responsibilities he carried, the more suffocating the noise became. Emails, deadlines, flights, meetings, campaigns. A life spent accelerating without ever stopping long enough to ask where the road was leading. According to Epictetus, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. But how can you say to yourself what you want to be if you no longer hear your own voice? This was the dilemma Ryan faced, not a lack of success, but a lack of silence. The modern American lifestyle promises fulfillment through speed. Move faster, achieve more, stay ahead. But an unquiet mind becomes a prison, no matter how impressive the world around you appears. Ryan had reached a level most dream of, yet felt a growing emptiness that no promotion or achievement could fix. According to Marcus Aurelius, nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul. But Ryan's soul had no retreat left. Even his thoughts raced. His victories felt muted. His success felt heavy. He was surrounded by opportunities, yet disconnected from meaning. This is the same tension felt by countless Americans trapped inside the expectations of a performance-driven society. A life where constant output drowns out inner truth. A life where the world celebrates your accomplishments, while your mind quietly begs for rest. According to Chrysippus, if you would be a reader, read. If a writer, write. If you would be quiet, be quiet. These words echoed the clarity Ryan lacked. He was producing, but not living. Communicating, but not connecting. Running, but not arriving. The more he tried to manage the chaos outside, the more chaotic his inner landscape became. Success had given him a platform, but it had taken his peace. And in that imbalance, he finally saw a truth that would change everything. A life without stillness is a life without control. According to Robertson, anxious minds do not need more accomplishments. They need discipline, perspective, and the courage to slow down. Ryan was beginning to understand this, not through theory, but through exhaustion, through the subtle feeling that something essential was slipping away and that no amount of ambition could bring it back. The price of an unquiet mind had become too high. And for the first time, he was willing to question the path that had once defined him. Number 3, finding Marcus Aurelius in the middle of chaos. Ryan Holiday had spent years surrounded by noise. The kind of noise that comes from constant demands, endless notifications, and the pressure to always deliver more than yesterday. His career had become a machine that never stopped running, and he had become the engine that kept it alive. But in one brief moment of stillness between meetings and deadlines, he picked up a book he had only glanced at before. A simple journal written by a Roman emperor who knew more about pressure than perhaps anyone in history. That book was Meditations, and its impact would be immediate. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." Ryan stared at that line, letting it sink into the part of him he had been ignoring for far too long. His life was fast, and his thoughts even faster. The color they were dyeing his soul was urgency, anxiety, and exhaustion. For the first time in years, he felt something shift, not a dramatic breakdown, just the recognition that he had lost the ability to hear himself. Seneca offered a blunt reminder: to be everywhere is to be nowhere. Those words described Ryan's reality with uncomfortable accuracy. He was present in every project, every opportunity, every crisis, but internally he was nowhere. He had mastered the art of being indispensable to everyone except himself. The Stoics were not merely philosophers, they were men who understood the weight of responsibility, the pressure of leadership, and the danger of a life lived outwardly instead of inwardly. Epictetus captured this tension with clarity. People are not disturbed by things, but by the views they take of them. This forced Ryan to confront a possibility he had never considered. Maybe the problem was not his career, but the mindset he used to navigate it. He had built his life on performance, on urgency, on proving something to the world. The Stoics were inviting him to build it on self-governance, discipline, and clarity instead. William B. Irvine added a modern perspective. Philosophy is not meant to decorate your life, it is meant to save it. And that is exactly what began to happen. As Ryan immersed himself in the writings of Zeno, Chrysippus, Musonius Rufus, and the interpretations of modern thinkers like Donald Robertson, the message became louder than the noise around him. A life without inner direction collapses, no matter how impressive it looks externally. Chrysippus captured this truth with simplicity. If you would be quiet, be quiet. Those words weren't a command, they were permission. Permission to reclaim his mind from the machinery of ambition. Permission to slow down without feeling like he was failing. Permission to rediscover the voice he had buried under years of speed. And in those ancient pages, Ryan found the lifeline he didn't know he needed. Not motivation, not comfort, but clarity. Number 4, the escape into simplicity. For most people, the idea of stepping away from everything they worked for feels unthinkable. But for Ryan Holiday, the real risk was staying exactly where he was. The more he read, reflected, and confronted the truth of his inner landscape, the more he realized that his environment was shaping him into someone he never meant to become. The noise, the speed, the deadlines, the pressure to perform, none of it aligned with the life he now felt called to build, so he did something that many admire in theory, but fear in practice. He left. Marcus Aurelius understood this desire for inner retreat. Withdraw into yourself. The mind needs a place of refuge. Ryan chose to build that refuge in the quiet fields of the Texas Hill Country. No constant meetings, no frantic campaigns, no corporate emergencies disguised as necessities. Just land, space, silence, and the freedom to rebuild his life from the inside out. In a culture that glorifies excess, simplicity becomes a radical act, and Ryan embraced it fully. He exchanged freeways for dirt roads, skyscrapers for open sky, and the constant push of ambition for the steady rhythm of intentional living. Seneca spoke to this kind of transformation. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor. Simplicity was not a downgrade, it was liberation. In the stillness of the countryside, Ryan found a clarity that had eluded him in the rush of the city. He spent his days writing, tending the land, studying philosophy, and being present with his family. The life he built was not smaller, it was deeper. The noise that once controlled him faded into the background, replaced by the quiet confidence that comes from living in alignment with one's values. Zeno echoed this spirit of intentionality. Man conquers the world by conquering himself. Ryan was not running away from success. He was redefining it. The world teaches us to measure our worth by accomplishments and external validation. The Stoics teach the opposite. They teach that control, clarity, and virtue are the only true markers of a meaningful life. In simplicity, Ryan found the space to embody these principles rather than merely admire them. Donald Robertson captures this modern pursuit of balance. We do not need fewer challenges, we need better foundations. By stepping away, Ryan was not avoiding challenges. He was building the foundation he had lacked for years, the foundation of a quiet mind, a disciplined spirit. A life governed by values rather than velocity. His escape into simplicity was not an ending, it was the beginning of a new kind of mastery. Number 5. Quiet success. The power of an intentional life. In a world that rewards noise, Ryan Holiday chose the opposite path. He chose quiet, not the absence of activity, but the presence of intention. No more chasing every opportunity. No more defining his worth by production. Instead, his life became anchored in a rhythm that felt honest, sustainable, and meaningful. He woke early, not to outrun exhaustion, but to meet the day with a clear mind. He wrote with discipline, not urgency. He walked his land, letting silence do the work that noise never could. He traded acceleration for awareness, and in doing so, discovered a form of success far deeper than the one he left behind. Seneca captured this truth with clarity. True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future. Ryan no longer lived in anticipation of what might come next. He lived in the richness of the day in front of him. This shift transformed not only his inner world, but his creative output. His books, written from a place of calm discipline, reached millions. The obstacle is the way, ego is the enemy, stillness is the key, became modern gateways to Stoicism for an entire generation. His work grew in power precisely because he was no longer trying to prove anything. He was simply living what he taught. Epictetus often reminded his students, do not explain your philosophy, embody it. Ryan did exactly that. His routine became a demonstration of Stoic values in motion. He engaged with the world, but no longer allowed it to dictate the terms of his life. He learned that intentional living is neither glamorous nor loud, but it is profoundly effective. His focus sharpened, his creativity deepened, his sense of self returned. Marcus Aurelius expressed the same principle. Do every act of your life as though it were the last. Living intentionally meant treating every moment as an opportunity to align with his values, rather than drifting through habits imposed by culture or ambition. This shift turned success into something quiet, steady, and internally governed. William B. Irvine added a modern reflection on this transformation. A life of virtue is a life of deliberate action, not reaction. Ryan stopped reacting to expectations and started acting with purpose. Every part of his life became a chosen act. The writing, the silence, the land, the family, the discipline, the simplicity. He was no longer performing success. He was living it quietly and powerfully in a way that echoed the wisdom of both ancient and modern Stoics. Number 6. A modern Stoic in plain sight. Today, Ryan Holiday stands as one of the most influential bridges between ancient philosophy and the modern American mind. His books reach CEOs, athletes, soldiers, students, creators, and anyone searching for clarity in a culture overwhelmed by pressure. Yet what makes him compelling is not the size of his audience, but the consistency of his life. He does not preach Stoicism from a stage of superiority. He practices it quietly on a small farm in Texas, far from the noise he once thought he needed. The world sees the results. Few realize the discipline and stillness that produce them. Marcus Aurelius offered a timeless reminder. If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Ryan built his life on this principle, not by seeking perfection, but by cultivating integrity in the smallest daily choices. He wakes early to write because discipline matters. He tends his land because simplicity matters. He invests in his family because presence matters. He He studies philosophy because understanding himself matters more than impressing anyone else. This is not the life of someone who abandoned ambition. It is the life of someone who reshaped it. Epictetus conveyed the heart of this mindset. No man is free who is not master of himself. Freedom for Ryan was not found in wealth or recognition. It was found in the quiet ability to govern his own thoughts, his own time, his own actions. His influence grew not through self-promotion, but through self-mastery. And in a society starving for authenticity, his example became magnetic. People recognized in him a form of strength that cannot be faked. A steadiness that comes only from living aligned with values instead of expectations. Chrysippus captured the essence of this transformation. Good actions give strength to ourselves and inspire good actions in others. Ryan never positioned himself as a guru. He simply lived in a way that encouraged others to question their own direction, to slow down, to reflect, to ask whether the life they were chasing was actually the one they wanted. His books, podcasts, and teachings resonate because they emerge from a life practiced deliberately and without noise. Donald Robertson highlights this modern need for grounded wisdom. We are not meant to eliminate emotion, but to train it so that it serves us, not rules us. Ryan embodies this training. He confronts fear through discipline, anxiety through clarity, ego through humility. His journey is a reminder that Stoicism is not a relic of ancient Rome. It is a living philosophy for those who choose to cultivate inner strength in the midst of outer chaos. He is a modern Stoic not because he teaches it, but because he lives it. Success is easy to measure, peace is not. That is why so many people chase the first and overlook the second. But Ryan Holiday's journey reveals a truth that resonates far beyond his personal story. The real battle of modern life is not won in boardrooms, metrics, or milestones. It is won in the quiet space where you finally learn to govern your own mind. The world may reward noise, but your soul rewards stillness. Ryan did not abandon success. He abandoned the version of himself that success had twisted into someone he no longer recognized, and in doing so, he rediscovered what truly matters: discipline, clarity, presence, simplicity, and the freedom to live without being ruled by the expectations of others. Marcus Aurelius reminded us of this inner alignment. Look well into yourself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if you will always look. Ryan looked inward and found the strength to rebuild his life with intention. His path challenges us to ask a difficult question. Are we chasing success or are we chasing ourselves? Because a life built on inner peace will outlast any achievement built on exhaustion. The victory that matters is not external. It is the calm, steady certainty that you are living according to your own values, not the world's demands. William B. Irvine expressed this modern awakening. The greatest achievement of a human being is to avoid being distracted by the insignificant. If this message spoke to something inside you, leave a comment sharing what resonated most in Ryan's journey. I would love to know which part reached you. And while you are here, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs this reminder, and subscribe to the Stoic Lighthouse so you can continue this path of practical wisdom with us. Before we close, here is a glimpse of what comes next. In our next video, we explore a powerful clash between two worldviews, a confrontation between a philosopher who believed freedom begins in the mind and a thinker who believed struggle gives birth to greatness. Two visions that shape how you deal with suffering, identity, and the conflict inside you. It is a journey that will challenge your assumptions, provoke your emotions, and illuminate the parts of yourself you try hardest to avoid. You will not want to miss it. And I leave you with one final reflection, not from a Stoic, but from Henry David Thoreau, who understood the courage it takes to reclaim your life. Go confidently in the direction of your dreams. Live the life you have imagined. See you in the next video.